Brilliance Audio presents Outbreak by Melissa F. Olson, performed by Luke Daniels. Overcast skies or not, Corbin Sloan was fading. He'd been following the massive van for more than 2 hours, and daylight was now seeping through the windshield and driver's side window, hitting his exposed hands, face, and neck. At first, the cloud-filtered sunlight just made his skin tingle, but as time wore on, it began to burn. His body began directing energy toward healing, which eventually drained him. This must be what humans felt like when they tried to drive after an all-nighter. But Sloan wasn't about to pull off the road. He had spent the last 2 years of his obscenely long life following a young woman named Reagan, a shade who somehow attracted the loyalty of other shades. Sloan, who had spent over a century hurting people for money, surprised himself by falling in line after her. And if he was being honest, falling in love with her too. Unbeknownst to him, however, Reagan had gotten herself involved with shade royalty. Sloan had only learned about it the previous evening, after he saw Reagan shoot Hector's twin sister, Sieglind, with some kind of dart gun. For the first time ever, Sloan had been angry with her. No, he was livid. They had argued as they drove away from the Switch Creek police station, going round and round. Reagan was tired of being isolated and making shit up as she went along. She wanted Shades to have a true leader, and Hector had proven himself willing to lead. Sloan, for his part, tried to point out that Hector was a cold-blooded killer of both Shades and humans, and insisted that Reagan should trust his own experience with Hector over her gut feelings. Reagan had countered that he, Sloan, had killed Shades and humans during his mercenary days too, and that was pretty much when they went back to the starting point. It broke his heart to do it, but Sloan finally gave her an ultimatum: walk away from Hector or he would walk away from her. And she chose Hector. So Sloan walked away. Or rather, he drove away in a gorgeous Bentley, owned by a wealthy woman in her late 40s who was charmed by his British accent, and the shade saliva he put into her bloodstream. Sloan had driven straight toward I-90 South, intending to cross into Indiana. He had no intention of staying in the same state as one of the royal twins, and then make his way south to Atlanta or even southwest to New Orleans. He had never been to the Big Easy, and it was one of those cities that was so cliched as a vampire hangout that he was curious to go. His fantasies about the French Quarter lasted for exactly 42 minutes before Sloan found himself pulling off the highway and slamming his fist down on the plush leather dashboard. "God damn it, Reagan," he said aloud. There was nothing to do but turn the car around. When he made his way back into Chicago, it was easy enough to pull the Bentley behind a state police car and mesmerize the trooper into telling him that Reagan had been captured, alive, and was going to be held at the state police station, jail, barracks, Sloan didn't know the American terminology, overnight. Sloan wasn't lovesick enough to walk into another police station full of humans, so he got the trooper to tell him which exit was used for prisoner transfers. He managed to find a parking spot down the alley where he could just make out the discreet door. And he waited. The Bureau of Preternatural Investigations in Washington had a few live shade prisoners, so they would be aware that shades were at their weakest shortly after dawn. Sloan was guessing the prison transport would leave shortly before the sun came up, so the shades could get inside the vehicle on their own power. And he was right. At 6:45, just before dawn, a very nondescript, very large van pulled up to the exit, and he saw them come out. First, 5 armed troopers, wearing those modified hazmat suits that were beginning to spread through law enforcement, the ones that protected cops from shade saliva. Then the 3 shackled shade prisoners, followed by another 5 troopers. Reagan was at the front of the prisoner line. She would have insisted. Followed by Cooper and Aiden, her most recent recruits. Cooper, a huge man who had been transmuted in his 40s, kept his head bowed, defeated. Aiden was looking around with frank curiosity, neither afraid nor confident. In a way, this was just another day for him. Reagan, for her part, shuffled along with her head held high, her eyes flashing rage at anyone who looked her way. She was fierce, but Sloan knew her well enough to recognize the slightest slump to her shoulders, a certain resigned sadness in her body language. The last residue of Sloan's anger dissolved when he saw that. She had trusted the wrong person, and she knew it.